Everybody, Chris Pies here with another PCA Sim classroom. This week we are going to be tackling our wonderful track at Road America. America's Nürburgring is another name for it. I hope everybody had a good time at the Red Bull Ring. We're going back to the States, back to a classic track, away from those pesky FIA Grade 1 tracks, and more to our traditional American track. Road America is famous for big long straightaways, big speed, and high risk corners like the King. So hopefully we can shed some light on it and get you around there safely, quickly, and with some success for your upcoming races. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get the replay queued up and go. Does anybody have any questions before we get started about previous weeks or anything in particular about the series while this thing loads? Everybody's race go okay? Oh, you guys all did
Oh,
fantastic.
it went more than okay.
It went more than okay.
Yeah, I finished much better than I thought I would.
Fantastic. How'd you end up finishing?
Sixth place and 0x in sport.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really, really good, Anchor. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Especially the 0x at Red Bull Ring. That is that is not a feat to be taken lightly. That is place just gives you 1x's, it seems like. And
It does.
What did you think about the setup, the medium downforce setup? Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it. I didn't change anything. I didn't even change the brake bias.
Okay, cool. That's great. One of the things we'll talk about this one now is for this week, we are changing a little bit and going from the medium downforce setting to the high downforce for Road America, which means it is a different setup. It gives you a little bit more grip. What it also does is it tends to give a little bit more understeer as well. So we're going to have to kind of play off of that and account for that when we drive around the track. Nice thing is for challenge and sport, it's going to be consistent. Everybody's going to have the exact same experience with the setup. So, everybody has to adjust their driving style if they're having problems with understeer. And I can share some tips on the best way to kind of try to get around it if people are having troubles. Okay, so we have a lot to cover. Road America is one of the longer tracks that we go to with an over 2-minute lap time. So let's get right into it. The nice thing about Road America is there's a common theme pretty much with the entire track that we're trying to get at. And that is we want to get through the corners with a focus on carrying speed out of the corner, meaning that we are willing to sacrifice the front end of the corner in order to get to throttle sooner and to get a good launch coming out of the corner to carry it along these really long straightaways that are kind of the characteristic of Road America. So with that being said, let's get this party started. I do have my telemetry on another screen, so if I need to pull it over, I can. If anybody has specific questions on what my throttle traces look like. But in the meantime, all my telemetry is also mirrored down here in the bottom left, so you can try to keep an eye on that as well. So here we are coming out of the last corner. We will chat about the last corner when we get to it through the normal track walk. Coming down the big, long front straightaway, which is hallmarked with that nice rise before the start-finish line, and looking forward to our turn one. So the entry into turn one is a really good, in my opinion, visual picture on how best to take turn one. We've got a lot of visual cues all over this track, and especially into turn one. We have this side road, access road, which represents a great spot for us to get ready to brake and to base braking off of. We also have the sets of cones, which normally we don't want to use anything that can move as a brake marker because it may not be there when the next time you come around. But as long as they are there, we can use them as a good representation. They stick out that orange on that green background. And then finally, we also have some stripes next to the cones, which give us a good visualization down on the track in our line of sight. Coming into turn one, depending on track conditions and such, which is always the disclaimer I have to make. But coming into turn one, our goal is to try to brake after the 4 cone and before the 3 cone, which corresponds to the 4 and 3 board, which are way out to the left we're not looking at. So somewhere between after the 4 board, or after the 4 cone, which is after the access road, but before the 3 cone. Where we break in here is going to be based on our comfort level with how we can carry speed in this car. If we are comfortable getting a really hard brake pedal and threshold braking scenario in the car, and then getting off and getting the car balanced for a very fast right-hander, then we can brake a little later. If we're having trouble transitioning from threshold braking to cornering, we may want to brake a little earlier and a little bit softer. So whatever your tendency is to when you brake, don't be afraid to brake a little earlier and softer to maintain the balance of the car because of the very fast right-hander that we're going to be going through. For me, I'm braking about halfway between the 2 cones. So right around here is when I'm getting on the brakes. And it's a firm initial pedal and then a quick bleed off the pedal, with a slight bit of trail braking after turn in and then off the brake. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, the whole goal with a lot of these corners at Road America is we want to get on throttle as soon as we can so we can start building speed to go onto the straightaway after the corner. So we're going to try to get off the brake, carry our momentum, and accelerate through the corner. So my turn-in point, so there's my threshold braking. You can see I get all the way to max braking and then immediately start bleeding off. So the way to think about it is if we think about it as a 10 pedal being the maximum amount of brake and a 1 pedal being just turning on the lights but not actually slowing down, the rhythm is 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and turn in. So quickly get to threshold braking. It should look like an inverse, or not an inverse, but it should look like a peak at the very beginning and then a long trail off. And I can actually bring the telemetry over to kind of show and visualize what that looks like. But if we're doing it right, we're bleeding off the brake consistently as we go in. We're turning in at about the candy stripe curbing. Our vision is not over here, though. Our vision is over here at apex. We want our right side tires in 4th gear to get all the way down as close to the dirt as we can get without getting on it. So taking all of the curbing. And then as we're going through the corner, we want to be adding throttle. And adding throttle is doing 2 things. One, it's transferring the weight to the rear of the car and pushing those big fat Michelins into the surface to give us traction in the rear. And 2, it's accelerating the car. So we're actually picking up speed as soon as we start to go to throttle. We apex at the normal apex point and let the car track out as it naturally would. Careful to not take too much dirt on the exit because the run out curbing does end pretty abruptly. So if I back that up and show it a little bit without me pausing it constantly, we're coming in, braking after the 4 cone, firm brake, bleed off the brake, turn in, off the brake, start adding throttle, should be at full throttle. We may need to do a little modulation on the exit just to make sure we end up in the right spot, and we're on our way. So just to show what I was talking about in turn 1, so here's some telemetry straight off of VRS for this exact lap. If we go to the brake trace right here, you can see this is what I'm talking about, the bleeding off the brake. So when I go to brake, it's very fast and very abrupt to get to my maximum brake, which is right at the beginning. And then it's a slow bleed off the brake. So there's the 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all the way through the turn in. And that's the proper trail brake that we need. So in any heavy braking zone at Road America, this is going to be the theme. Firm initial pedal, the maximum pedal pressure we're going to give is going to be right at the beginning. And then it's going to be trailing off pretty abruptly after we do that as we go deeper into the brake zone. Just keep that in mind. Coming up to turn 3, because turn 2 is this little kink that isn't actually a turn. Turn 3, our brake zones and our brake markers are a little bit less than they were in turn 1, but we still have one really good marker. And that is where the 2 board is, there's a line. So what I'm looking for out of the corner of my eye is this white line. And as I cross the white line, that's where I'm going to start getting on the brakes. Unlike turn 1, though, we are going downhill, meaning that we're not going to have as good a brake pressure and a good as brake feel as the flat surface of turn 1. So we need to be aware of that. As we come in, I'm braking after the 2 board. It's going to be, again, like turn 1, a pretty firm initial brake that immediately starts bleeding off. We're going to trail brake a little bit deeper into this turn because this turn is a little bit more severe than turn one. It's not as fast. So we need to get the front end of the car to really take a bite and follow the corner around. What I try to do with this corner is I try to treat it a bit like a carousel. So I try to get down to the candy stripe curbing on the inside pretty quickly. It always feels a little early. And then ride that curb around. As you can see here, I'm riding it around almost like a little mini carousel with the acceleration point coming after the midpoint of the corner. As you can see, I've already started picking up the throttle to full throttle in third gear all the way out. So if I back it up and show it again, kind of see what it looks like. Two board, firm brake, threshold brake. Notice how I hold the brake a little bit longer than turn one. So yeah, still on the brake even though I've already started my turn in. And then I'm off the brake as the car is taking a pretty aggressive dive down to the corner. So at this point, I'm done with my braking. I'm going to start feeding on that throttle, let the diff in the car kind of give me that last little bit of rotation and start accelerating out of the corner because this is the second most important corner on the track since it leads onto the second longest straightaway. So third gear, we want to get a good run.
Third.
Go ahead. What was that?
No, you just answered it. Third gear?
Third gear, yes. Third gear through here, apexing again right on the grass, much like turn one. It's just a little bit of a different shape. Now on this particular lap, one thing you may have noticed both in turn one and in turn three is I get on the throttle and get out. So right here, I'm on throttle and then I get out of throttle and I get back on. The reason is the car understeered more than I was expecting to. And that comes down a little bit to the setup. I'm used to setups that tend to continue the rotation through here. With the high downforce setting, what's happening is that that big rear wing that we've got on the car is set to max downforce, meaning that the downforce of the car is pushing on the rear of the car. What happens with that is it tends to lift the front. And so once you go to throttle, the front end is going to start to understeer. And you're not going to continue the rotation. So for this particular lap, when I was coming through here, when I got on throttle, I got that understeer. And if I would have kept it on throttle, I would have just understeered off the track. So coming off the throttle allowed the front end to take another little bit of a bite to complete my turn. It's not the fastest way through in by any means. When you go to throttle, you want to maintain throttle. But obviously, if you're not going to make the corner, you're going to have to make adjustments so you stay on track. So that's why that adjustment is there. All right, assuming we get to turn three, well, now we're running down the second longest straightaway on the track, with the longest being the front straight. It's not perfectly straight though, and one of the things I normally see is people tend to pick a side. They tend to pick the right side because the next corner that we're going to have to brake for is a left-hander. And so they tend to take the right side and just follow it around. The problem with that is the track is kind of going right, left, and then ending up in the brake zone. If you just follow the right side of the track along the grass, you're going further than you have to go. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, not a wiggly line that goes in the shape of the track. So what I always try to do is I try to create the shortest line to try to minimize time. It may only result in a few hundredths, but hey, we're doing everything we can here. So what I try to do is create a straight line between this point right here on the track and a straight line to the little left-hander that's down here before the braking zone. And you'll see my car basically just driving a straight line here. So you can see me, I'm leaving the right side of the track, I'm apexing on the left, and then I end up in the braking zone coming up here in a straight line. My car has been dead straight the entire time, even though the track's been moving. And I end up in a good spot for the brake zone anyway. So think about it, try it, see if it saves you maybe, half a tenth or so down the straightaway. It means a lot when you're trying to outrun somebody that's just following the edge of the track. Coming into turn 5, this is kind of notoriously the most difficult braking area on Road America. And the reason is we're coming off a big long straightaway. The car is screaming and pretty much at its top speed. We're at 156 miles an hour, and I think we're close to 158 when we actually get on the brakes. We are coming off a flat surface and going downhill in the braking zone. So like turn 3, the brakes don't want to work as well because gravity is fighting us. And we're going incredibly fast and we need to slow down for the slowest corner on the track. There's also a real tendency to try to outbrake opponents coming into turn 5. We've got a big wide track, lots of room. We've just been barreling down really quickly, and it's very, very tempting to try to go just a little bit later to try to outbrake our opponent and get by them at turn 5. It's a fantastic brake zone, probably the best on the track. The problem is, though, if you try to outbrake someone, it's very easy to overshoot the corner and just end up in the marbles on the outside. So we have to be aware of that. But assuming we're going through uncontested, let's show what the line typically looks like. I'm looking at these little boards on the right, and my board that I am really focused on is the 2 board. I am going to brake before the 2 board, and this is threshold braking, absolute threshold braking textbook. We're going to get on the brake coming downhill. We need this car to stop, and I usually brake just before the 2 board. Another visual is the end of the gravel on the right where it meets the track. We want to brake before that point. I draw a straight line from my brake zone that goes over the candy stripe curbing because this is not a 1X. This is considered part of the track, and we need every little bit of track that we can in order to make this corner as wide as possible to carry as much speed through. This is not good if you're racing somebody, because if you go all the way out to the right, it's very easy for them to sneak their car up the inside, take away your apex from you. But assuming you got no one around you and we're trying to take the fast line, we want to use all this curbing on the right. So you'll see me come all the way, straddle the curbing. Left side tire is basically right on the yellow line, or right on the white line. I don't really like to go any further. You can go even further, but at some point you're traveling a further distance than the benefit you're getting out of it. You do need to go left at some point. That's where the corner is, and going further right to go left, it's diminishing returns. But I find that this is a pretty comfortable and repeatable line for me. Straddling the car, putting the candy stripe curbing basically right underneath me in the car for the turn in point. You can see I've already bled off the brakes, and as the corner comes up, we're in the downhill and we actually go uphill slightly. So it actually, the track comes to us pretty much right at the turn in point, which is great. So we can get a really good turn in. So we don't need to trail brake too terribly hard. In fact, you can see I've already started my turn in and I'm just barely on the brakes. And the goal here is a super late apex. We've got a candy stripe curbing on the left. We've got a little bit of dirt that is a static dirt color on the track from iRacing, which is a really good area that we could be focused on, or at least see in our peripheral, that we want our left side tires to get close to. And we want to apex on the back end of this. So way deep late. I actually missed it a little bit. Notice how I didn't quite get all the way to the dirt. I'm basically apexing the curbing. You can get all the way and put your left side tires on the curbing. Be careful though, don't go over the curbing, because this is a pretty significant hole. As you can see here, you can see the drop off here. If you go in here and you put your left side tires on the dirt or in the grass, you're going to get a pretty nasty bump on the exit, which can really upset the balance of the car. So you can get on the curbing, don't go over the curbing. If we do it right, we're accelerating coming out of the corner. You can actually see at what point I start picking up the gas, halfway gas pretty much at the apex point. Just understand that when you go to gas in this corner, the car is going to stop rotating. It's going to start pushing. So you're going to have to really kind of wait on the throttle as the car goes around the corner. If we do it right and we get on the throttle, we're going to end up all the way on track out, which is all the way over here, pretty much getting as close as we can to the gravel on the exit. A little bit of kiss of the gravel is okay. We don't want to put two wheels totally in it, because it will slow our car down and we risk getting a 1X.
In third?
This is in second coming through here. So I go all the way down to second. So sixth all the way to second, second through here, get a pretty good squeeze out of second here, and then grab third on the way up the hill. A couple things to be wary about this corner. If you do get somebody that dives you on the inside, two things to worry about and focus on. One, if they dove you way too late, they're not going to make the corner. They're going to run through it. And if you try to go on their outside while they do that, they have nowhere to go. They basically have no control over their car. You're going to turn and they're going to hit you. That's not ideal. Even if you're in the right, you're still wrecked. If you see somebody really sending it on the inside here, one thing that you can do is brake a little bit earlier. So instead of braking here, If you see somebody kick out to the left like they're going to try to make a move on you and outbrake you into the corner, instead of threshold braking, brake maybe here, just after the 3 board. They'll go sailing by in the brake zone, but then they will go through the corner and you can undercut them, meaning that when you get to this point here and they sail by you on the left, you just turn underneath them and take a tighter corner and over under them and probably get a run on them coming out of the corner. If not, be side by side with them, but be on the inside for the all important turn 6 at the top of the hill. If they don't do oversend the corner, you can definitely go too wide here, but you just have to be sure to leave them enough room on the inside. You can hold the outside and carry more speed, but just be careful to leave them enough room on the inside. You don't want them hitting you for whatever reason. If you protect going into turn 5, so let's say you don't take the ideal line, you don't want to be passed, so you move over to the left, make sure you stay on the left side after you've declared your line. Look at where they're at. If they take this traditional line that goes all the way to the curbing, you can match with them all the way, but you can't like brake and slide over the track over them and push them off to the track, because they may not take the line that straddles the curbing. They may take the traditional line. And remember, the track surface is technically defined as between the white lines. So if you push them off the track to where they have to go off the track, then either they don't do it and you door them and then you'll be at fault, or they can always make a claim to say that you drove them off the track because you left the surface, or you forced them off the surface. So just be cognizant of what you're doing with your opponent here. Give them enough room to race, but only enough room. We don't want to just hand them the corner either.
Hey, Chris, I got a question related to that.
Sure.
On the exit, if a car goes side by side with you and takes the outside line, and as part of them trying to pass you on the outside, they go all 4 wheels outside that white line onto the black tarmac, are they on or off the racing surface, and what does that mean in terms of track reentry?
Yeah, so this is a really good question, and it's series dependent. So I would recommend looking at the rules. I'm not totally sure for PCA what the rule is. If the rule is, if you're not getting a 1x, you're on the racing surface, then you have to be allowed to maintain to stay on the racing surface. You never left the racing surface because you never got a 1x. If the rule is between the white lines, then yes, technically this is off the racing surface. And if there's a car that puts themselves right here on the racing surface, they don't technically have to let you in. Which means that you're going to have to yield to them when you run out of room at the end of the curbing, right? But let's go to the practical aspect of this. Let's say you're the car on the inside. The outside car is sending it around the outside. You guys are neck and neck coming up the hill. If you're this car that's on the racing surface and the car off the racing surface is out here, you could be in the 100% correct letter of the law saying you don't have to let them back on the track. But they're going to see this grass coming up, and they may not know that you're holding them all the way to the right, and they may try to come on anyway with you there. You make contact, and you guys spin. You're both wrecked. When it ever comes to this, if I'm the inside car, I'm never pinching my opponent on the grass here because I don't want to risk them coming over into me trying to stay on the surface. So I always give room, but it's a risky run if you run over this curbing that the car on the inside may not let you on, and you may have to just get out of it. So
yeah, I was thinking more from the perspective of the outside car trying to overtake, because I see quite a lot of people try to re-enter right where you have the car paused. So they try to avoid that 1X in the gravel, but then they kind of come back in onto the racing line with too much of an angle instead of using all of that black track out all the way up to the little yellow part. So I'm just, is it reasonable to expect the guy trying to pass on the outside, if that's technically part of the racing surface because it's not an X, to use all of it and go all the way up to the top before they come back in?
It's reasonable to expect it, but just understand that at some point they're going to want to come back in, whether it be right here, up there, somewhere in between the two. I would just give them room. I would give them a car width on the track surface as soon as I can, basically, if we're really, truly going too wide. Practically speaking, though, what ends up happening is if you're the inside car, you don't know where the outside car is. You don't know if they're tracking all the way out. And so you usually end up in here anyway, because you don't actually know how much room this guy's going to need. And so you tend to give, or you should be giving some room anyway on the outside. So Yeah, very good questions. We're getting into the nitty gritty of how to race somebody properly coming through here. And at the end of the day, we want to race each other how we want to be raced, right? So if we were the outside car, for instance, we would want space to bring it back on. So treat them the same way if you're the inside car. Give them some space to come back on, especially if it's early in the race. Now, if you're racing for the lead and this is the last lap and the last wave goes through, okay, gloves can come off a little bit. You're probably going to be racing each other pretty darn hard at that point. But if you're racing for 12th on lap 3, give each other room, and be nice to your other racers. Great question, though. All right, any question for the first third of the track? I'm just checking my chat to make sure there's nobody on Discord or on Twitch that wants to ask a question. Okay, we're good. Okay, hearing none. Okay, so now we're coming up the hill to the great left-hander at the top of the hill, which I think is a great passing area, especially if you got a really good run on the inside on the corner before. If you were too wide coming up this hill, which happens a lot, the car on the inside has all the advantage because the outside is off camber, greasy, and just difficult to hold. The inside car has pretty much almost right away on this corner. We're going uphill. It's completely blind, but because we're going uphill, the braking zone is very, very short because gravity is helping us. I tend to let this car run all the way in third where the lights are blinking to shift, but there's no point. Even if it bounces off the rev limiter once or twice, upshifting to fourth isn't going to do you any good. The radical signs over here on the right board is a really good indicator of where we should be braking. Unfortunately, the brake zone tends to be right at the crest, right as we're losing the hill helping us. So when we brake, if we go with a really heavy pedal expecting a lot of grip due to the uphillness of the brake zone, it goes away pretty quickly and we have to modulate our brake. It's not as important in an ABS car because ABS will figure it out. But if you're driving like a cup car or a GTE car or something without ABS, you really have to be careful not to lock the brakes as you crest the hill. So driving a lot of those cars myself, I tend to modulate it, just not even thinking about it. But as I come in, I'm braking pretty much right at the end of the radical sign, as you can see here. Firm initial brake, but then immediately start bleeding off of the brake because of that loss of traction as we crest the hill. Car gets light, we lose traction. We turn in pretty much as soon as we get on the top of the hill. We're starting our turn in, basically when we can see the curbing on the left. I downshift to second gear here, which is right there. Try to apex it very late, and in this car you really have to wait on it because of the understeer tendencies with the setup. And then get back on full throttle coming out of the corner. So if I back it up and show it again, coming up the hill, brake, off the brake, we see the curbing, we turn in, we wait. Now we start feeding on the throttle with the late apex to get a good run coming out of the corner. In my opinion, that's the most difficult corner to get consistent on the track because it's blind and because the car really doesn't want to turn in on initial turn in. Where things can get tricky is when you turn in, if you use too much throttle on turn in, so you turn in, you get on throttle too soon, the car is very light because it just came over the crest of the hill, and a tendency is for the car to want to try to oversteer on entry because you're overpowering the rear tires. Same thing if you turn too sharply with the wheel, you can put a shock in the car basically, and you have a lot of grip on the front if you're on a lot of brake. The rear of the car doesn't have a lot of grip, and you can end up spinning on turn in with a really aggressive turn in. So nice and smooth on the way in. Only add throttle once you have the car loaded and you're starting to unwind your steering. Coming up to turn 7, this fast right-hander. I couldn't take it flat, so just if you can, fantastic. If you can't, don't feel bad. I couldn't take it flat, so I was cracking the throttle every time. The big thing we want to try to focus on here is we want to minimize how much we come out of the throttle, how much speed we scrub to go through the corner. So we want to be all the way on the left side tires, almost touching the grass. Nice, gentle roll in to maintain the balance of the car and keep the grip on the left side tires. If we crack the throttle, it's just going to be for a second to let that nose tuck in just a little bit more. And then we're going to get right back on it once we know that we're going to make the corner. two methods of taking this corner. One is the one I did, which is get up on the grass, right side tires, straddle the curb as much as you can. We're trying to increase the radius of the corner as much as possible to carry our speed. The second method is to don't take nearly as much curb, so keep it nice and tidy. Right side tires just kissing the inside of the curbing. What that does is that tends to keep the car more flat, which doesn't upset the grip and the balance on the way through the high load corner. You have a narrower radius, but because the car is not bouncing around, you have more grip. So whatever feels most comfortable. I tend to do both through the race. It just depends on the turn in. But don't feel bad if you turn in, you realize you're going to clobber this curb. Just make sure that you're not really full throttle over it. Make sure you've got a nice level platform as you're coming through the corner to make sure you're not going to upset the car and spin on exit. Use all the curbs. Yes.
Yeah, I find that just as I get off the throttle, if I short shift into fourth, I actually get more speed on the downhill because I don't get the delay from shifting while in the acceleration zone.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing too. I'm doing the same thing, and that's a good point. I forgot to mention it. I short shift into fourth before I hit the corner. So I'm grabbing fourth pretty much right at turn in. So third, fourth, and then I ride it through there. But that's a good point. You probably want to be taking it in fourth. If you're taking it in third, you're probably overslowing the car. So try fourth, see what it feels like. But fourth should be the corner for that turn. Great point. All right, now we're rushing down the kettle bottoms into a fast left-hander. I am looking for the 3 board on this one, which has a nice line, and I'm braking just after the 3 board. Again, much like all the corners, threshold brake. Threshold brake, go down to second gear, turn in with a little bit of trail braking, and then get off the brake and start accelerating through the corner. It's just like turn 3, just going the other way. And we're going downhill in the braking zone. So downhill initially in the braking zone, about halfway through the braking zone, it will actually come back to us. So the track is going to come back up, and we're going to get really good braking right before turn in. It also helps our turn in as well. So great braking, threshold, coming off the brake, turning in. If you notice here, right at the apex curbing, or where apex would be, look at that curb and look at the camber of it right here. You can see a ton of it, which means it's cambered towards where we want to go. We want to use that curb and that camber to help us get a little bit of extra turning. If we miss that camber on that curb, we're leaving grip on the table effectively. So we want to get down in there to get advantage of that camber. So if you look at my line through here, you'll see I brake, I turn in, and my goal is to get into that little bucket right here of camber. So apex right on the grass, right where it's oddly enough, you've got a tan sand line where people in real life really kill the grass, and that's why nothing's growing there. And so you want to apex right there, right in a little bit of a dip to help you get a little bit more turn in. We're in second gear going through there, get a good run coming out. And if we go to the telemetry, since I've got it up, why not use it? This is turn 8, I believe. Yes, turn 8. We can see what I was talking about with the braking. So coming here, if I make it a little smaller. So this is the brake right here. You can see what I've been saying all along. Our initial brake pedal is where we hit the brake the hardest. We slow the car down, and then we start trailing the brake off as we start to get closer and closer to the corner. And then we turn in. So this is the steering angle. This is where I start turning in. So I start turning in right here. You can see where the brake is. I'm at 37% brake when I've started my turn-in point. And then I only shed brake the more and more I turn the wheel. And that's because after I've turned the wheel, I've already got that bite from the weight on the front tires. And at that point, I've got my rotation, and I want to start transitioning to accelerator. And as I transition to the accelerator, I am obviously off the brake. And when I get to full throttle, I get off the steering and straighten it up so the car can take it. So all your brake zones around here should pretty much look like this. Firm initial pedal, and then bleeding off as the as the braking zone continues.
Yeah. Another comment. If you get on the curb right where the car is, right there, there's a horrible bump that unsettles the car. If you go just one tire with further right, then you get a really severe bump.
Okay, that's a great point. So I tend to nibble this curb, so I just get a little slight rumble. I'm not on the curb, and the reason I don't do it, I don't even know about the bumps because I don't go over there. But one, it sounds like there's a bump, so you probably don't want to go over there. The other thing too, and I'm guilty of this a little bit, and especially other cars, not so much the Porsche, but like the Ferrari. For some reason, it's got a really wide track, or a wider track I'm used to. If I get too far over to the right, I tend to sometimes clip this grass pretty much right at turn in, which is terrible, right? So you're hitting a really low friction surface right when you're asking for grip from the right side tires. And it can lead to a not fun situation. So just be careful. Don't hit the grass. Try to avoid getting on the curb too much. Keeping it nice and tidy on entry is perfectly fine for this corner. Again, second gear coming through here. Getting on the curb to get that last little bit of turn. And just ride the rotation through on the way out. All right, going to the Johnsonville Hot Dog Bridge, and we go into the world famous carousel. Yeah.
Can you do that turn again, but from cockpit view?
Yeah, absolutely. So here we go. So coming down into the turn, there's the 3 board, cross over the line, brake, 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 turn in, trying to get down to that. You can see how much camber just from the cockpit. Hit that, open our hands on the way out, let the car run.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so now we come to the famous carousel. And I bet you if I ask the question of who thinks the carousel is flat here, meaning in elevation, there's probably a significant amount of people say, oh yeah, of course it's a flat turn, like on a flat surface. It's not at all. And I didn't really know that until I went to Road America in real life. It has a huge elevation change throughout the entire corner. It starts up here and ends way down here, going around in a circle. Because of that, we have to understand cognitively that this corner is downhill the whole way around. So we have gravity fighting against us. We don't have a lot of grip, and that's why this carousel seems to, one, take forever, and two, never have enough grip. It just never seem to be able to carry as much speed as you want to, and that is in part because we're going downhill the entire duration. So pretty much as soon as we go under the bridge, we're on our downhill trek. I'd like to treat the carousel as kind of a 2 apex corner. The initial apex is right here, pretty much where the this brown or gray spot of dirt is, where the grass is dead. And then the last one is the apex where the candy stripe curbing is at the bottom of the hill, at the bottom of the carousel. Everything in between the two is just kind of fluff to try to figure out how we can get the car to that last apex. And there's so many lines through here. Some people like to let the car drift way out to the outside to get a really good turn and run coming through the last one. Some people like to keep it really tight and keep it as close to the grass all the way through here to minimize the distance traveled. No way is right or wrong. It depends on the car, it depends on your driving style, it depends on the environment, what you had for breakfast. It's crazy. And I tend to use different ways throughout a race as well, depending on how it feels. But for this particular lap and how I felt right here, I'm going to kind of show you this line. It's kind of I tend to try to take a little bit of a shallower line to minimize the distance traveled, but not always. So there's apex 1. I missed it a little bit, but I'm trying to keep it as tight as possible through here. At this point, sometimes you'll see people drift way out to the left. I'm in 4th gear coming through here, and a lot of this turn is pretty much coasting. If I'm coasting, I'm doing what? I'm scrubbing speed because I've got steering angle in the car. So my speed is going to be dropping, so I don't have to necessarily hit the brakes. So as my speed drops, the front end of the car is going to start to tuck in. And as the front end of the car starts to tuck in, I want to time that so the tuck in starts to happen to where I can get on throttle knowing that I'm going to get my right side tires pretty much on the curbing that's coming up. So you can see I've already started picking up throttle, modulating, bam, full throttle because I know I'm about to get to the bottom and I'm about to get to the curbing. There's my second apex point, candy stripe curbing. I've been full throttle for a while now, picking up speed. And the car should end up all the way with left side tires on the curbing on the left. Back it up and show again. Pay attention to I don't touch the brakes anywhere in here. I'm not saying you can't, but I'm saying you can do it without. We want to carry the speed. So watch my throttle. Full throttle coming in, I attack it pretty hard, and then as soon as I go through my first apex, boom, I'm off. I'm coasting, a little bit of maintenance throttle just to maintain, coasting. Then I know I'm going to start to get closer. I start to pick up throttle, and then boom, full throttle when I know that the car has got a really good line and it's going to make that final apex. This is the point that matters through here. When you go boom to full throttle, that's what matters. The earlier you can get to full throttle and still make the final part of the corner, the better, because you're going to be picking up speed going to the final part. If you are braking or slowing down still and you're like right here where my cursor is, you're going to be slow coming out of the carousel because you could have picked up throttle sooner. And that goes with your line and how the car is situated. So
Yeah, but the kink's waiting for you. So there's that.
The kink is waiting for you. But here's a little secret. It's flat. It's flat with this setup in this car on this track. Work up to it, but once you take it flat and realize you can take it flat, you'll wonder how you drove it any other way. The kink is almost a non-issue when you can take it flat because it takes all the guesswork out. All you got to do is turn in at the right spot. If you have to modulate the throttle to get through the kink consistently, then there's a lot of variables there. Turn in, how much throttle, balance of the car, and all that. But if it's flat, the decision's made for you. Just take it flat. So I'm going to try to get you on the correct line to make you take it flat. So we got a good run coming out of there. We're screaming down into the kink. We got two boards, a 2 and a 1. We're going to turn in at the 1 board with our left side tires basically as close to the grass as we can get. Our eyes are going to be at the curbing on the right. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get our right side tires to basically get as close to the curbing without getting on it going through the kink. Definitely possible to do. There it is. Boom. As close as we can get. I'm 100% flat full throttle. Nice and quiet steering wheel. Nice and quiet hands. Plenty of room on the exit to be able to take it flat. No problem whatsoever.
Hey, Chris, is it flat on lap 1?
Yes, it was flat, or at least for me it was. If it's not flat, let's just assume it's not flat. Let's assume that, what's my track temp? 81 degrees. I put in the time and the date that's on the website, what they're supposed to be using, which I think is August 4th at 7:15 p.m. So it should be pretty close. But let's assume you've got a really hot track with less grip. What you're going to want to do if it's not flat is you would lift between the 2 and the 1 board to scrub speed. You're not going to have to brake. I can pretty much guarantee that. But if you want to, you can do a little bit of a lift, like a half throttle lift right before the 1 board between the 2 and the 1 while it's in a straight line. You're going to turn in with a little bit of that lift, and then you're going to get back on full throttle when the car is like right here, and you're going to ride the throttle through. That should scrub maybe about 10 miles an hour off with that little bit of lift, which should enable you to get through no problem. But I still don't think that you're even going to need to do that. I think you should be able to take it fully flat. The key to taking it flat is you have to have a good line. If you're taking this corner and the kink from mid-track for some reason, you don't have enough room to take it flat. You've got to be all the way left side tires on the curbing and take and basically this is one of the few places where I have a turn in point. Like, I normally don't have a turn in point. I turn in when visually it looks like I should be turning in. This is one of the few that I know my turn in point is the 1 board. So I want the car to turn in. I start turning at the 1, and the car's going to, because of suspension and lag, it's going to turn. It's actually going to start moving after the 1 board. But the 1 board is my trigger, effectively. I know I need to be turning in at that point. And if I do it, I always end up in a good spot here. Even if you do get up on the curb, it's not the end of the world. Just understand that the car could rotate a little more than you want. Just keep your hands nice and quiet. Where people get in trouble in the kink is they get to this point right here and say, oh no, I'm going too fast. I need to slow down. And so what do? you let off the gas. If you let off the gas at this point, when you have max weight transfer and max grip on the left side tires, you lift off the throttle, you take the car from this state to this state, you take the grip off the rear tires. When you do that, you're looping around every time.
And the easiest way to do that is following another car that's not quite going fast enough. Easiest way to do it.
Yeah, if there's another car in front of you and they lift and you're not expecting it, what are you gonna do? You're gonna snap off that throttle and maybe even touch the brake, which is gonna exasperate the problem, and you're gonna spin. So always be aware of what the car in front of you is doing. If you get a good run coming out of the carousel and you're closing the gap on the car in front of you, it's tempting to drive all the way to the rear bumper going into the kink. Problem is you can't take the kink too wide. So why do you want to be on their rear bumper? If you're on their rear bumper, you're not closing the gap anymore, right? You're matching their speed. You go through the kink, you're both full throttle. You're not going to gain on them. You're going to maintain that gap. What I would rather do is I would rather lift back here, open the gap a little bit to make sure when I go through the kink, I can go through a little bit quicker. So when I exit the kink, I am going maybe 5 miles an hour faster, which enables me to pass them on the straightaway. But if I match my speed to the car in front of me because I'm on the rear bumper going into the kink, I have no run on them coming out. So it's always okay to lift a little bit to open that gap so you can take the next corner faster and have a run on them coming out. And it avoids the problem of running into the rear of them. If you're right on their rear bumper and they all of a sudden go slower, you got no out. You got to think about that.
Just like every lap one. So.
Yeah, just like every lap one. You don't want to be 2 inches off the car in front of you and then they slam on the brake for whatever reason and you have no time to react. You're just going to plow into them. So, great point. Thanks, Steve. So, assuming you go through the kink properly, and the other thing is on the exit, look at all the room you have. All of this curbing is perfectly fine. In fact, you can get your left side tires on this grass and the car is still going to be okay. So long as you don't have a ton of steering angle, which you shouldn't. But even if your path takes you all the way out where your left side tires are touching this grass, you're okay because your steering is straight, and that's fine. So you actually have a lot of room on the exit of the kink. Even if you run way wide for some reason and you're out here in the grass like two wheels, keep the wheels straight, slowly come out of the throttle, and bring it on safely. Just drive through the grass and bring it on safely and bring it back on track. Don't try to save it. Don't try to avoid the grass, because right when you hit the grass, if you've got steering angle in, you're going to lose traction on that side and you're just going to hook it into the inside wall. Kink's only scary if you make it scary. Don't let it get in your head. And that's coming from experience, because I was scared of the kink for a long time, especially in GT3 cars. All right, getting a run through the kink, we come down into Canada corner. Really good brake markers on the left side. We're looking at the 3 board. We're going to brake just before the 3 board, and it's just the same story as always. Brake, threshold braking, and then start bleeding off the brake as soon as we get to the threshold. Canada's a weird corner in the sense that I always turn in earlier than I think I need to. We want to get down to the curbing pretty quickly. It's almost like a mini carousel. Right side tires touching the dirt portion of the corner, so it's a late apex, but our right side tires are going to be pretty much on the dirt. Second gear, there's the dirt, and then we get on full throttle coming out of it. We're going to use all the curbing on the left. We can clip the grass over here, right here, as we're crossing over it. It's perfectly fine. If we get 2 wheels over the white line when we cross over here for the grass, then we'll get a 1X. But this is fine right here, and the fast way through. Where people get in trouble in Canada is they try to brake too late. If you brake too late and you turn in too late and you end up out here, there's just no grip. And you have to way overslow the car to get it finally turned for the corner. The fast way through is to actually turn in early, take advantage of the camber that's right there on the inside right here. You can see how much track we can see, which means we have a lot of camber helping us, and use that to our advantage to get a good run coming through the corner. Coming through.
Hey, Chris, can I just ask one quick thing there?
Absolutely.
I can't get the car to slow without lifting at the 4 board and doing exactly what you did. braking hard at the third board. I can't get it to slow to make that turn in that second gear. Can you figure something I'm doing that I can't, that's causing that?
Yeah, so notice I trail brake really deep into this corner. It's one of the few corners that I do that. I forgot to mention that, so thank you for bringing up that point. So look at my braking. Brake, still on the brakes, 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 still, now I'm on gas. So I am braking, I am on some form of braking all the way to the apex through here. If you're not doing that, if you're getting off your brakes at turn in, so like right here, like most of the other corners, if you're off the brakes shortly after turn in, you're going to be carrying too much speed unless you brake earlier. I'm not saying you can't do it, but you'll have to brake earlier. Because all of this turn in point right here, as I'm turning in right here, this is still braking area. So at my turn in point, I am going 87 miles an hour. What am I at apex? 67. So I've scrubbed 20 miles an hour between turn in and apex. That's a significant amount of speed I've scrubbed. So you got to still be scrubbing speed all the way to apex on this corner. It's one of the weird corners where that actually is beneficial.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And one of the
Chris, what I'm noticing is you're staying at full brake for at least 2 of those markers.
Yes.
And that's how you're getting the speed all the way down. Normally we'd stab it and then start trailing off. You're not regressive there at all. You're staying right up in it.
Yeah,
it's
so
great.
I think it's turn 12. So if we go to okay, so here's Canada. So you saw some of these. So if I go to turn 7, for instance, I'm just picking a random, well, that's not a good one. Turn 8, picking turn 8. Look how the braking, and this is distance, so these should be equal. So you can see how I go up and then come down. There's a little bit of plateau, but not too terribly much. Pretty much starts to come down pretty quickly. If I go to Canada, which is right here, look how much bigger the plateau is. And then it drops off significantly after that. So this is all, the area under the curve is braking force, is braking ability. So I'm using more of the threshold braking to slow the car down in that initial phase. So it's not quite as quick a bleed off as, say, if we go back to turn 1 again. Look how much peakier it is. So there's not nearly as much area under the curve to allow for slowing down, because we don't want to do that for turn 1. We want to maintain our momentum. But for Canada, we got to slow the car down to a certain level in order to get down to the apex, because it's a weird angle. Great point, Jim. All right. We get through there, we come up to the penultimate corner. I love that word, penultimate. Can be scary because it's pretty blind, but once you go through it and get a good feel for it, it should be okay. We don't need a brake for it. All we need to do is maybe a little bit of a lift, especially with this setup. I was finding being flat through it tended to just understeer me into oblivion. So we'd want to maybe do a little bit of a lift right here before the apex as we crest, to get a little bit more of a bite on the front tires. But it is not a full lift. It is like just a lift to 60% and then back on it. So again, nice wide line, right side tires on the curbing, turn in, a little bit of lift right here to keep that angle, and then back on it as we crest over the top. If we do it right, we'll end up over here. We'll hit that curbing on the exit, and then we'll have this access road, which is extra track that we can use to straighten our line. But the key through there is it is fast. Is if I can boil it down to a phrase, it is fast. And then coming up to the most important corner on the entire track, which is the final corner because it leads to the longest straightaway. We've got a really good brake zone in the sense that we've got this nice seam here where we've got this new darker asphalt. That's my brake zone, is the seam. So I'm looking at the darker asphalt. I want to brake at the seam right there. Boom. And this is a really good example of threshold braking and then off the brake. So it's a threshold brake, straight line, and then start bleeding off of it pretty darn quickly. Turn in, third gear. The temptation is to go to second gear. And you can go to second gear, but I always find you over slow. Third gear, we want to get all the way to the left side, almost touching the rumble strips. Turn in. It always feels like I'm turning in early, but the understeer and the way the track is designed is you're going to get this little bit of a slide in the car. And then we're going to start picking up throttle really early and almost have this four-wheel drift coming through here. You can see I'm pretty much at full throttle and I haven't even hit the curbing yet. Get all the way up on the curbing, get close to the grass. It is a late apex, a super late apex. So if we come all the way back and we see how much curbing I go past before I get down to it. Still waiting, still waiting, still waiting. Right here. I am on the latter third, if not quarter, of the curbing before I get down to apex. And that's to open up the corner from when I get on the throttle. I want to be powering through the corner to take advantage of that big long straightaway. We don't want to break down like Canada down to the apex. And if we do it right, we'll get a good run coming down all the way down the straightaway, which is a lap at Road America. So what I will do is I will go to the cockpit, grab the lap time, which was a 2:05.4, and show it without me starting and stopping it from this vision. Alright, so we're screaming down the front straight, getting ready for turn 1. Remember, fast right-hander. We're going to brake after the 4 cone, which is after the service road, before the 3. Brake down to 4th, turn in, get down to the dirt, start opening my hands, and allow the car speed to take it. We're going to brake just after the 2 board and the line on the ground. Treat it like a carousel. Get down to the curbing, ride it around in 3rd gear, and get back on the throttle. Quiet hands the whole way through. We gotta let the car give what it's gonna give us. We don't want to be strangling it and manhandling it. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, so we're trying to straight line this as much as possible. We're gonna brake just before the 2 board. Brake, straight line, nice wide entry, late apex. Open our hands as we're adding throttle in 2nd gear. We're gonna brake just before the end of the radical board in 3rd gear. Brake down to 2nd. Nice wide line. Get the car over to the left. Shift up to 4th. A little bit off the throttle to maintain the corner and then back on it. We're gonna brake just after the 3 board down to 2nd gear. Get down to the curbing. Use the apex. Use the camber there. Come out. Short shift to 4th into the carousel, and then we're just going to use the throttle to turn the car. If we need more turning angle, off the throttle. If we're too tight, we add throttle. The most important apex is the one at the end. Hit it, and we're good. Turn in at the 1 board, flat. Right side tires just barely kiss the inside curbing. Nice quiet hands. We're going to brake after the 400 board here. We're going to maintain our brake for a significant period and keep trail bringing it all the way down to the apex, 2nd gear, and back on full throttle. We're going to turn in at pretty much at the top. We're going to do a little bit of lift right there and then back on it. Looking for the seam for the final corner. Brake down to 3rd gear, late apex. There it is. Early throttle to get a good run coming through all the way up the hill. And that's Road America. I'm sure there's some questions. I'm happy to delve into anything with a little bit more detail should you need.
I have a question for you.
Sure, Jim.
Did you hit the pits at any time during this practice?
I did. I just don't know if I recorded it.
Okay.
Let's see here. No, I didn't. I didn't show it.
Okay. No big deal, but we're working again on the West Coast EDE tonight on crashing the cones.
Yeah.
And it's what I tell everybody is there is a brake marker that you need to find coming into the pits.
Yes.
And it's like any other corner, any other anything, you need to be down to that speed. But you can carry it up there almost all the way.
Yes, and I'm going to show you what my marker is, which is what I'm guessing the important part of this. The nice thing, so excuse my camera as I move it around. Whee, flying around. Okay, so here's pit lane on the entry. We got a hill, right? Big hill. I use the bottom of the hill as my marker. So there's this pretty much where the hill starts, and then, or no, sorry, there's a point, especially from the cockpit of the car, where it definitely takes a pretty big rise up. And here's pretty much the point right here. And then basically once that car goes up the hill, I brake maybe a car length in. So if I had to put a marker on it, it's right here. Now you're going to say, wait, there's no marker. No, there's not. But it's a visual thing. As I'm coming up in a car, I know what it looks like. I know what it feels when I hit that bump right here. It's hard to see in the scene. The only thing that gives it away is kind of this little crease right here in the grass. But I know what it feels like in the car when it takes that big bump up to the sky, and then I brake just after that. And it's threshold braking all the way up the hill. The key is to find the point that you can brake, and you can basically jam on the brakes and ride that brake all the way to the cone. And the cone is right there. The cone is not here at the bridge. The cone is not here at the start of this little road. The cone is right here at the start of this little, I guess, barrel and the fence. So you want to be, ideally, when you hit that brake pedal and you give it 100% threshold ABS panic stop brake, you want to end up at your speed limit at the cone. That's the ideal. However, you don't want to be going too fast over the cone. So if you're going to err, where are you going to err? You're going to err on being too slow going into the cone, not being too fast. So always give yourself a little bit of room, especially if after a run your tires don't necessarily have as much grip as they did if you're practicing it. Maybe the track got hotter and has less grip, so it takes a little bit longer to stop. Always give yourself a little bit of a buffer to make that. So, and then when I go to full threshold braking, I'm hitting the pit limiter back there on the way up the hill. I don't hit the pit limiter right before I go in. I hit it basically as soon as I know that I'm braking all the way in. So hope that gives
Cool.
a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Cool. Well, passing. Okay, yeah, good point. I would pass in turn 1 is a great passing zone. Let me get off of this pretty picture and show you. So coming into turn 1, it's very, of course that lap ends. Coming into turn 1, if you can get a really good run on your opponent, it's very easy to get on the inside and pass into turn 1 and take the apex away without doing too much. If you're the car getting past and somebody has driven to your inside for turn 1 and it's early in the race, I would just lift a little early, save a little fuel, let them go and just tuck in behind them and get a draft later on. Passing into turn 3 is not really advised. The reason is 2 cars going too wide through here is going to be slow, and you're going on to the second longest straightaway. I'd much rather ride behind somebody, get a run coming through this corner, and then pass them on the big long straightaway than diving them, getting by them, and then them drafting off of me and passing me into 5. Turn 5 is probably the most common passing place right here. It's because it leads into the tightest braking zone, or the hardest braking zone, and the tightest corner on the track. Nice and wide. It's just perfect for passing, especially if you followed someone all the way down. If you're being passed, be aware. We talked about that earlier of what they may do. If you're doing the passing, the big thing I would focus on is make sure you are at apex and not your opponent, and you're going to make the corner. Don't overdrive the corner. If you have to park it at apex, you can, and they can't run over you. So what I mean is, like, make sure you're right here if you're the passing car. Even if it means you have to overslow to get to this point, the other car is going to get stuck behind you, and you'll be able to make the pass. Similarly, if you can't complete the pass in turn 5, you can make it and complete it on turn 6 if you're the inside car. If you're the outside car going into turn 6, I would lift early and just tuck in behind them. You don't want to be caught out here in the marbles and run out of track and end up in the gravel and spinning. Turn 7 is not a passing zone. It's just one single file. Some people may try to force the issue and you may be too wide coming up to it. If you're too wide coming up to this corner and you're not the inside car, get out of the throttle. Let them go, tuck in behind them. If you try to take this corner too wide, best case scenario, you just lost 2 seconds to the field. Worst case scenario, you guys come in contact with each other and wreck. Turn 8 is a good passing zone as well. You'll notice a trend here with all of these kind of similar corners. You have a straightaway preceding them, which means it lends to a good chance for a brake battle. This can be done. It's not as common, but it can definitely be done if you get a good run through turn 7 to get on the inside and take away the run from somebody else. Not common to pass in the carousel, but I have seen cars go too wide through here. Typically what ends up happening is whatever car is on the outside, if you can maintain too wide all the way through the last apex, the car on the outside tends to have a better run. but it's keeping it on the outside all the way around is what's difficult. So only do it if you know what you're really doing and you have the confidence to stick it, and the car that you're passing is maybe off pace or you're much quicker. But cars from a similar pace, this is probably not going to be a place where passing is going to be prevalent. No passing in the kink, please. Just don't do it. You can't take it too wide, and if you try, again, best case scenario, you lose 2 seconds to the field. Worst case scenario, you guys are touching and you end up in tears. Canada is a really good passing zone. Again, long straightaway leading into a really tight braking area. Oddly enough, the car on the inside, even if you're on the middle of the track, there's such good braking, and I don't really know why. I'm guessing it's the camber. There's just more camber on the inside in this corner than what it looks like. But it always seems like the car that is shallowest tends to do the best in braking. So whoever's on mid-track or even less than mid-track tends to just do better braking and entry into the corner than somebody on the outside. So it is very easy to pop out on somebody, outbrake them, and still make the corner through Canada. No passing through here because the cars are pretty much flat out all the way up the hill, so you can't really get alongside someone. And then in the final corner, it may be tempting to try to pass, but I would highly advise against it because 2 cars going too wide through here are going to lose time, and you're going on to the biggest straightaway. Just get in line, maybe lag a little bit, and let the gap increase on the way in so you can tighten the gap up on the way out and get a good run and pass them clean and free before you even get to turn 1 by using the draft. All right. Okay. So again, that's Road America. Great track. One of the classics. We all love it. We love it because it enables you to do clean passing and clean racing, unlike some other tracks. So make sure when you're practicing this the next couple weeks, practice taking the track offline, drive offline. Pretend you're passing people when there's nobody there, but what would you do? Okay, I'm going to take this corner from mid-track to see what it feels like. Make sure you practice it before you try to execute it in the race. You'll be more prepared for it and know how it feels. All right, well, with that, I will bid you guys good luck with the races coming up. If you have any questions, just send me a message. I think there's an EDE, maybe. If there is, I invite you to go out there and work with our wonderful instructors on some of their drills to try to make you a better driver and better racer. But with that, that's all I got.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks as always, Chris.